Oh, we live. We are live. Hi, hi, hi. Hey, Laura.
Hello, everyone.
How are
From
you?
London to New York. We're having a cold winter.
It's colder for you. I think you've got like 10 foot of snow.
I don't know where to figure out the exact total. I need to Google it because they measure it in Central Park. It's probably over a foot now. It's been coming down for a whole day.
I
So
saw
if
a
you hear
couple of
the large
people.
plows coming, this is the thing with New York City. When there are plows come, they are the loudest trucks you ever hear. It's like all night. I found a nice white noise app last night for my iPhone, which helped. I'm like, I
I bet
can't
you
hear
needed
trucks
it.
all night.
Yeah, I bet you needed it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of like real estate guys that I follow on Instagram, and one of after I'd messaged you was like, oh, like will you message me? Like we've got snow. Had a quick flick through Instagram, and I was like, oh, like that's proper snow.
Yeah.
I think we had, so UK wise, I think we had a bit a couple of weeks ago, but particularly where we are, we get like that much and it just like lightly covers all the grass.
Yeah.
So that's what we had last week, while other people had like 6 or 7 inches. But it never comes to us. Like I don't,
Yeah.
we're expected it this weekend, but it won't be anything like what you've got.
It's sort of fun in the country because it looks so majestic, but in the city it just gets very gray very fast. And so the
Dirty.
only fun place to go is Central Park and play in it. I just haven't been motivated yet because it's still icy and it's coming, until it settles down, I don't really feel like schlepping around.
So when it settles, we expect a snowman.
I will send some pictures.
Okay.
Maybe even a video on Instagram. I know people love that when
Yeah.
I record when I'm out there.
Awesome. So we're not here to do weather forecasts or snow, but it was like,
Fun to mention it.
I wanted to know what it was like. So I think we said we were going to answer some questions. So you've got some questions that we're going to tackle today. Is that right?
Yeah, this is very exciting for me and Kelly that there are people who comment on our videos, which we appreciate, with questions and follow-ups and things that they're thinking about. And 2 came through in between our weeks off, so we didn't have a chance to address them last time. But I thought it'd be fun if we kind of try and tackle them one at a time. There are 2 good meaty ones. And I think the fun part of these questions is like there's not really an easy answer, so at least we can just kind of brainstorm with them. Okay, so the first one comes from a woman named Sincerely Peace, and she said, would love to hear your advice and tips on how to perform HR virtually for new HR professionals implementing HR policies, e-events, updates, etc., all online now.
That is a big question.
It's a big question, exactly. There's not like an easy, immediate response. So the idea is, how are we performing HR virtually, especially for new HR pros who have to implement things for the first time online? So what are your first thoughts on that?
So I suppose for me, and I think as we've seen over the last 12 months, we're having lots of conversations and lots of people are giving us hints and tips on what it is that we need to do virtually and how it needs to be different and all of those sorts of things. But I suppose the first thing that comes to mind for me is the same that I would say to anybody who was implementing it in person, if everybody was in the same office. And I think that is really just speaking to as many people as you can across your business, getting a really clear understanding of what some of the issues are, of what people would like to see improved, what people would like to see different, what people would like to see implemented. I think we still have, and I've seen some of it again. So I'm taking this week off, but in some of my downtimes, I have still been scrolling far too much through social media, and I still think far too many of the HR questions are relating to, has somebody got a policy that I can borrow? Has somebody got this that I can borrow? Has somebody got an induction pack that I can look at? Has somebody got this program that I could look at? And I think we've just got to stop trying to do what everybody else is doing. We will never be an employer of choice. We will never be doing what it is that our people need if we do not speak to our own people. Like I can say to you, right, okay, Laura, tell me how to, like, what's your, I don't know, best practice or top tips for recruiting. And you could say to me, you know, what's best practice for burning the handbook or for coaching. And, you know, for me, a big thing for me is that there is no one size fits all approach. Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else. And I get the talk of doing all of this HR stuff virtually is, you know, quite scary for some people. But I think we've got to go back to basics. Speak to your people, ask them questions, and then create solutions and have conversations around all of the stuff that is right for your people. I think I've kind of always said, whenever I do any kind of, whether it's HR transformation, whether it's helping some of our smaller business clients in kind of recruiting their first HR person or any of those sorts of things, for me it starts with what do you need? What do your people need? What do your people want? Yeah. What are HR there for in the business? So are you there to be strategic? Are you there as business partners? Are you there as administrators? Are you there as trusted experts? Do you have a seat on the board? You know, are you a key decision maker? And I think starting with some of those questions to really define what HR is here for, what are the expectations for the people, and then create the solutions around that without this kind of expectation that there is a one size fits all, because there just isn't. It very much depends on your people, your culture, your values, your behaviors, your leaders, your managers, all of that kind of stuff. So I think just have the conversations, ask the questions.
Yeah, I love that. And I love when you said also, I think there's kind of this fear that HR pros feel around everything going virtual. So that therefore they feel this immense pressure to be massively innovative or somehow do everything differently. I think there's kind of twofold to that. Yeah, on one hand, of course, because it's new and we're all frightened when it's new, and especially as our viewer might be feeling if she's a new HR leader, then it's compiled with the fear of that role and that I'm doing it virtually.
Yeah,
which I have massive empathy for. But exactly what Kelly's saying, firstly, you just kind of take that fear away and realize you probably know more than you think you do. And your employees and leaders can also help you brainstorm. So what I've been inspired by lately is people have been talking a lot about employee engagement virtually, right? How do you keep employees like engaged with each other and communicating and having fun? Because frankly, that's part of an office culture. Usually there are, you know, birthday lunches or a monthly party or something going on. And I've been loving hearing not only HR pros thinking of these things, because again, that's a lot of pressure for HR leaders to always come up with an idea, but to ask their staff, like, what sounds fun? And then who knows, your head of marketing could be the person who says, you know what would be fun? A cooking class. Or your office manager might say, let's send boxes to everyone with little tokens of swag and gifts inside. Or, you know, it could be your CFO comes up with a fun idea. The idea is not to feel like you have to think of it all. So exactly to your point, if you ask around what kind of reward would be fun to receive, I've been loving, to your point, all the innovation and that it's unique to each firm. I wouldn't want there to be one, like, because then it's boring, right? If every company sent handwritten notes to each other and every company sent a swag box, it'd be like, what's the unique selling point there?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, brainstorm with your people and get creative with the fun events. And as far as policies and updates, I don't really see much different. I mean, it's still communication. So you're still probably sending out an email or a newsletter.
Yeah.
And now you actually have the advantage of using video if you want to convey more messaging.
Yeah, and I do. I think in some ways, I think we've got more scope. I think, you know, again, I think the old thinking has always been that there is like this one size fits all approach. So if I'm in HR, if I'm changing policies, I'm going to communicate it this one way. But in doing it one way, you don't reach all of your people anyway. Some people want it in a face-to-face update. Some people want it in an email. Some people want it in, I don't know, a WhatsApp form. Some people want it on a Slack channel. Some people want it on a postcard. You know, there's so many different ways of doing it. And I think sometimes, again, for HR, we get lost in that when we're in the office because we assume that we've got, I don't know, X amount of percentage of people in an office, but actually not everybody is picking up emails at the same time. Some people have always been remote workers. Some people have always been working from home. Some people are, I don't know, working on sites or working out with customers and doing all of those different things. And I think we've missed some of that scope. But again, I think what I've seen for some HR teams, particularly when it comes to some of the policy stuff, is we walk into that HR office and we get told, right, okay, we need a new suite of policies. So we look at what we've had already, and sometimes we just start to tweak some of that stuff. And some of that is ridiculous, wordy, complicated, overcomplicated, overly long. Lots of it sometimes is kind of started off as documentation from lawyers or solicitors or employment solicitors or all of that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of legal jargon. It's usually kind of, books that are kind of this thick. So we usually start kind of tweaking some of those sorts of things. And then we start asking everybody else for best practice, right? Who's got a disciplinary policy? Who's got a grievance policy that I can have a look at? And we just keep churning the same stuff over and over and over and over again. And I think, and if anybody wants to take a look at it, I think it's on the Reward Gateway, the RG YouTube channel. It was a talk that I did for, and I've done it many, many times before, but a talk that I did for the Reward Gateway Employee Excellence Summit, which was about burning the handbook. And it very much is about creating, going back to exactly what I said at the beginning, it's going back and creating what it is that your people need for your business in your language. If you're thinking about policies, the policies should be worded exactly the same as you would send an email or you would send a birthday card or something else. I think we don't have to worry that our policies have to, the more boring and long and complicated our policies are, the less our managers and our people are going to read them. And I've got one quick story. When I was first recruited as two relating to this particular company, but when I was first recruited in as HRD, I'd been kind of headhunted for this position. They wanted my innovation and creativity and all of this great stuff that I'd done before. And yet the first two tasks that I was given when I first started in this role were getting the dress code policy over the line with our kind of employee forum and dealing with this massively complex kind of disciplinary grievance type thing that had been going on for about 6 months before I even joined. And I remember looking at this staff dress code policy. It was one of the most ridiculous things that I had ever seen in my entire life. So, skirts or dresses shouldn't be any more than 1 inch above the knee. In terms of tattoos, you weren't allowed to show more than 1 square centimetre of tattoo, and it was ridiculous. And it kind of went on and on and on and on. And I remember going to this staff forum, hi, introducing myself, new HRD. Hi, I'm the innovative, creative one. Let's talk dress code policy. The two didn't fit anyway. And I remember having a conversation with them. It's what is the issue with this policy? Why do we need this level of detail? Why has it been taking so long? What's the issue? And it turned out that the issue was one of the particular heads of service who worked with, for the company that I worked with at the time, one of the departments was really about helping disadvantaged adults and helping them get back into work. And he would have face-to-face conversations with these people all the time. So he would wear jeans, trainers, and a sweatshirt usually to go and speak to the people that he was speaking to who were dressed in a very, very similar way. And some people on the employee forum were getting fed up because when he came into the office, he didn't have a suit and tie on the same as everybody else in the office did. So trying to change that mindset of, okay, if this is how Charlie is dressing this way because it is appropriate for the people that he is working with. He's not going to carry a suit around with him just to have this. But nobody else had asked the question as to why we needed such a lengthy, long, boring, ridiculous policy in the first place. So we ended up with literally kind of 3 or 4 line kind of paragraph, dress professionally, dress appropriately for the, for the clients and customers that you're doing. And that was it. And it was, it was kind of signed off immediately. And the same company with this kind of grievance, disciplinary, complex case that would be going on for like 6 months. I had no idea, like I'd been in HR at the time for how long? 14 years? Maybe not quite that long. 11, 12 years when I first joined. And I had no idea where we were in any of this policy. Like, I couldn't make sense of the policy. I couldn't make sense of any of the wording. I had no idea where we were up to, the conversations that we did. So I ignored the whole thing. I had a conversation. I rang this guy who we'd had suspended for like months whilst all of this stuff was going on. And I rang him to say, what is it that you want? How can we rectify it? And will you come in and speak to me? And within 3 weeks, I had this whole kind of 6-month thing dealt with, but I'd ignored the entire policy because the policy made no sense, wasn't focused on the people and wasn't fixing anything.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget all of that stuff. So remote or not remote, speak to people, ask them what's needed, ask them why we need all of this paperwork and all of this stuff, because we've got, you know, if we want to create people first workplaces, if we want to drive the change, and if we are, particularly if we are sticking with this kind of more remote way of working, we've got to make it about the people.
Yeah. What do you say to the HR pros who fear lawyers, right? So even when I'm hearing this, I'm like, all the lawyers will hate this, right? Because when I'm working on contracts with new clients, like some of them are very cool, like word it however you want, no big deal, just, you know, as long as I understand what you're saying and whatever. But some are like, my attorney made a revision to line 3 and 4 and 10 and 12 and 16. And I'm like, I don't understand what he's talking about. We need to get on the phone. This is because, again, sometimes legal jargon, and this is no offense to attorneys, it's not understood by us common folk. So how do you navigate that when you're an HR director?
I think, again, it's understanding why they're making the changes. So again, I've worked in organizations, and even some of our clients will kind of take advice from us, or, you know, kind of listen to what it is that we're saying, but will then want to check it with their employment lawyers. And for a lot of HR teams, when they are making decisions, the exec team, the C-suite want to then check it with employment lawyers. And I think what I've always found the most frustrating, again, this isn't a criticism of any employment lawyers or any solicitors or lawyers or attorneys or anybody out there.
Them. They have a purpose, of course.
Absolutely. But again, I think what my experience was, whenever we needed to speak to lawyers, solicitors, attorneys, employment lawyers, whoever it was, or whether it was projects or cases or whatever, they wouldn't give us a straight answer. So if I say, you know, I will always say to people, you know, kind of when I'm speaking to them, we can do A or we can do B. This is the risk associated with A. This is the risk associated with B. Let's talk through what it is that we want to do. A lot of the employment lawyers that I have worked with will not give an A or B response. They'll give a kind of A and a half. Well, you know, it's kind of up to you what it is that you want to do. We would advise, based on paragraph, you know, 2.6.2.2.2, that you do this, but really it's kind of up to you. And I don't think necessarily, and I get some of that, of course, is the legal stuff. If a solicitor or lawyer tells you to do something and you do it, and then it backfires, they don't want to take responsibility for that. Like no lawyer wants to be sued by their clients for giving them the wrong advice. But again, I think we've got to, the risk of burning
the handbook, right? It's like probably the fear people come to you with is, but Kelly, if I burn it, what will my lawyers say?
Exactly. And what do your lawyers need you to have that in the first place? So again, through doing some digging, where I have uncovered some of the things with, certainly, I don't know, it may be very, very different in the US, but for some of the employment lawyers that are over here, if you say sign up for them, so again, you and I kind of both work on some of the retained packages, right? So if I have got a retained package with you and you are my lawyer, part of that retained package would also, definitely in the UK, again, not with everybody, but with some of the people that I've spoken to, some of that retained package includes an insurance so that if we end up at a tribunal, we end up in court, there is that insurance that then covers it from the legal perspective, right? But you're only covered by that insurance if you do as I tell you to do.
Right.
And if what I'm telling you to do is not people focused, if what I'm telling you to do is not related to a particular paragraph in a particular contract or in a particular policy, it's then highly unlikely that you're going to be covered by that insurance. And again, so I think there is the financial side of things. I will still, I still stand very firm in that I have never ever been to I've done 22 years in HR. I've never ever been to an employment tribunal. I've never had to go to court. We've been threatened with things, but I have, in terms of keeping the documentation, in terms of having those conversations, if I've been to that, if I've totally burnt that handbook, but you and I have had a conversation about the real thing, like, Laura, what is it that you want? I want this. Okay, policy says we have to do this. Are you happy if we ignore the policy at this point? Yes, absolutely. So we have a conversation, we have that relationship. So in 22 years, I have never, ever had to go to court because of any kind of case for any person whatsoever. But I know through, again, from a UK perspective, speaking to some employment law solicitors, most people will end up at a tribunal in court, not because they haven't done the right thing, but because they didn't follow line 2.2.2.1 in whatever policy, and it's that stitched them up. So again, I think the broader we can go with some policies, and give ourselves a little bit of leg room, allowing ourselves to treat each other as people, we're then less likely to end up in a court in the first place.
I love that. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head again of, like, we cannot fear lawyers and legal documents and contracts. What we need to do is have human conversations. And frankly, even attorneys are modernizing themselves right now.
Absolutely.
They're kind of going through that same evolution. Yeah, the same evolution we are in HR, which is people first. I think they're going through that same thing. And so we need to view it as a partnership instead of a fear-based, the lawyers will say something, as opposed to, let's bring them in then and let's have a discussion and let's find the wording that's still legible to the average person and makes sense. So I agree completely. And I think that's what I hear this fear a lot from HR pros, is like, well, I wanted to burn the handbook, or I wanted to make a really creative, fun document, but I worried about the lawyers. And I guess, to your point, then talk to them and show them, and probably it's fine. I mean,
and we've spoken about this before as well, haven't we? Like, is that a genuine worry and a genuine fear, or are you thinking that it's a genuine worry and a genuine fear without speaking to them about it in the first place? So if you were to go to them with legal document A and, I don't know, up to date plain English B, and say, okay, we want to give B, what's your view?
Right.
And have that conversation, co-create it with them, have that level of conversation, see what comes out of it, rather than feeling that you have to stick with A, because otherwise, and they might come and slap our wrists and then tell us off, and then we'll feel like, we've failed and we're not doing our job properly.
Yeah, again, this is another, comes from lack of self-worth. And just to circle back to the online thing, this is totally unrelated, but I just remembered this. I have heard of it, and I don't want to give away all the creative ideas I'm hearing, but this is a good one. I've been hearing HR leaders creating podcasts for their organization. So, instead of just an intranet that we all used to have, the website with the updates, to really do even like what we're doing, you could do this in-house. You could have a podcast. You could have video content that you send out. And that's HR being so fun and creative, which makes me so happy, because I don't think it always has to be so serious and formal. So I know we've just had a boring discussion about law, although it's important. HR can also be very modern and fun. And so I would say to anyone thinking about doing something differently, now that you're online and virtual, the sky is the limit of how you can do that.
Absolutely.
You could be interviewing your CFO, a different leader every week, and show it to your staff. And you could do showcase a certain employee and learn more about them outside of work. There's just so many fun things you can do. But I think what Kelly's saying earlier and what I'm saying is, try to think of it on your own and let your own creative juices flow and talk to your employees, because everyone's got ideas and people really do want to feel heard.
Yeah, and again, we're going to be totally different things. Totally different things. Worked with a client last year to create some of their training, and again, they'd got really worried at the beginning of lockdown. They wanted to postpone the whole project for a few weeks because they weren't used to working virtually. We were used to working virtually, and we spoke to them about it. But the training suite that we helped them produce was a mix of face-to-face when they can do face-to-face, a mix of online when they can do online, a mix of kind of podcasts, a mix of e-bites, and a mix of I suppose kind of blog type kind of bite-sized stuff. So not only were they delivering the same message in so many different ways based on the different types of learners, but they also actually, if you had attended the face-to-face workshop but then wanted a refresher, you could pick up the podcast, or you could have a quick read of the blog, or you could watch one of the videos. You didn't then have to go through another face-to-face training or online training or any of those sorts of things. And again, I think the more creative we can get, the more that we can start to look at it. I mean, definitely over the last year, the amount of really cool tech that is allowing for us to communicate in different ways. You know, we started using a system for some of our online training that allows for like really kind of interactive whiteboards. And, you know, you can post-it note and you can put pictures on there and you can do all sorts of stuff, which again was, you know, I'm a total kind of flip chart queen whenever I'm delivering kind of face-to-face training, but that kind of allowed for that. There's been some amazing stuff that's been launched over the last 12 months. And I think if we can start to look at some of those things from an HR space and how we want to communicate with our people, speak to them, listen to them, all of that stuff, the work, like, it's enormous.
Yeah, and attending other HR webinars and learning opportunities to decide like what formats you like. And if you see something like that, you can email the person. I'm sure anyone can message you to say which software is that, which app is that. Just keep exploring and learning. But I agree, it's endlessly evolving. So try to just keep staying current.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's get to question number 2 before we talk a whole hour on question number 1.
We can keep going.
I know, because this is another fun one. So this is from Amy H. And she said, I would enjoy hearing you both discuss emotional intelligence. It's something I feel like I possess, but often wonder if I'm lacking or how to grow this skill.
Okay. Well, do you want to start there? Because you did a topic on that for one webinar last year, didn't you? Yeah,
I mean, emotional intelligence is like probably my favorite thing to talk about. So it's hard. Yeah. Actually, yeah, I did a talk last year for Bamboo HR's virtual summit on HR self-worth, and they just re-released it on demand. So I definitely recommend watching that. I mean, that's really about how to improve your own sense of self in HR, which for me is really the basis of emotional intelligence. But I also recently did one for an HR tech company. And I think the thing with emotional intelligence is kind of a broad topic. What I'm imagining Amy is asking when she says she feels like she possesses it, but wonder if it's lacking or how to grow it. Like what I'm hearing there is sometimes we want to make sure that we're actually showing intelligence to the people we're communicating with. So we might feel it, but are we displaying it? And this is where I think it's a skill in communication. So it's like actually wondering how you're writing and how you're speaking. So where I see it go awry, like where I'm seeing a lack of emotional intelligence displayed is in email communication or in verbal communication on Zoom or on the phone. So emails, it could be, I mean, it doesn't matter what the topic is, right? You could be networking on your email, you could be sending an email to a colleague or a friend, but sometimes you can read it out loud before you hit send and say, am I proud of this email? Does this email reflect my personal values? Does this email reflect my brand? Because I will tell you, most times when I get an email where I go, whoa, that is cold or abrasive or harsh, and I mention it to the sender when I talk to them, like, hey, can we just talk through your email? They'll often say to me, oh, I wrote that when I was so rushed and I wasn't thinking, and I know I shouldn't have sent it. And I always remind them that, like, it's okay to have an angry, frustrated moment at work, but that is not the time to send an email, especially to someone you don't really know very well. It's one thing to do that to your spouse, your best friend, but like it's a work email. And that's, as an HR leader, again, no shame for having those feelings of rage, but not the time to maybe start typing, right? But I get those daily, and I have to address that because I think it's something like, it's just more, it's happening, it's reactive, right, as opposed to proactive. And I see it on the phone, and I think I had an amazing talk the other day with this guy, Will Thompson, who's a recruiter in Austin, Texas, and we could not be more different. He's a Texan, and it's like I'm the New Yorker, he's the Midwestern. I don't even know if it's Texas the Midwest. It's Texas, it's its own country. He is the kindest person, and we were on Zoom. We've only talked a handful of times in our life. And he kept saying, which is something I train on, and I couldn't believe it because I don't hear it often. He kept saying, I can imagine, instead of I can't imagine. So you and I have talked about this. Like, to me, when you say to someone, oh, I can't imagine what it's like to be in rural UK right now, or I can't imagine what New York City feels like, you're putting up an emotional guard. But Will kept saying, I can imagine New York City feels strange right now. I can imagine the HR market was hit hard last year. And I felt so seen and heard. I actually had to email him the next day and just tell him how much that meant to me, because I realized how rarely I hear it. And so there are just, again, it's subtle ways to show the recipient, I see you and I hear you and I understand what you might be feeling. That's in a nutshell how I feel about emotional intelligence.
Yeah, and I suppose for me, and I think it comes back to something you started by saying with that question, and again, what we were saying before. I think for me, I think the more emotional intelligence comes up a lot, and again, I think more so over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And I think, we've been talking about emotional fatigue, we've been talking about emotional intelligence, we've been talking about needing that emotional connection, the fact that we are not in the same room as people anymore. We're saying it's harder to be able to read people's emotions and people's energy. And I suppose to some extent I can agree with that. But I think, as I was saying in the first question, for me it is about that like what I was talking about, the internal reflection of your own people and your own business. For me, the emotional intelligence stuff, as really with everything, starts with us.
Yeah.
And so how aware are you of your own feelings? How aware are you of yourself? How much of that kind of self-discovery, self-awareness, self-understanding have you done? Because I think if we are wanting to grow in emotional intelligence, and probably if you Googled emotional intelligence, you would get millions of results, right? There are books, podcasts, magazines, videos, training courses. Like, there's so much stuff out there that will tell you this is what you can do to develop emotional intelligence. But I think it has to start with us.
Yeah.
And if we're not prepared to be emotionally intelligent about ourselves and emotionally aware with ourselves, and I'm not an emotional intelligent expert, but my feeling is that we can develop all of the skills, but I genuinely do not believe that we can be fully emotionally intelligent unless we are emotionally aware of ourselves. And I think we can start really by tapping into something. Like if somebody asks you how you are, like, hey Laura, how are you today? Oh, I'm fine. Right? Fine is not an emotion. Fine doesn't really say anything. Right? Laura, how are you today? Oh, I'm good. Right? What does good mean? Whereas actually, and I know you and I do this to each other a lot, and we've done it off the screen and on the screen, and we do it in our messages, and and I think we will genuinely do it. Like, fine or good or okay, what is that telling me? Actually, today I feel frustrated, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel happy, I feel elated, I feel excited, and I think we've got to get better at some of that with ourselves in order to then be starting to pick up on some of the emotions of others. Like if I'm totally closed, like, nobody's ever going to see any emotion, I'm totally emotionless because, we're not supposed to show how we're feeling. I don't want anybody to know how I'm feeling. I think by putting up that blocker, not only does it kind of stop me feeling anything, but it's also stopping me from feeling what you're feeling. Like, I can't put a barrier up and still be able to pick up on how you're feeling. Like, if the barrier's up, the barriers up. And I think that
Yeah.
closes kind of both sides of that barrier.
Yeah. It's so funny. One of my best friends has a daughter in first grade, and she sent me a photo knowing I would love this. The teacher had set up in the class, and it's like a little pod. You know, they're very safe for COVID. There are 3 kids in the room, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the teacher set up this emotional intelligence. She doesn't call it that for 6-year-olds, but it's basically what it is. It's little faces with emotions, like emoji faces, smiley, sad, teary, nervous, and they have the words under them. And then each child in the morning, they sit around and they can point at the face that they're feeling. They have to describe it. This is what I'm feeling. And then they have, I love this part, they allow for time to like heal so that they, I know this sounds very cheesy to a lot of people, but to me, this is like music to my ears. They are all told to bring in a stuffed animal that brings them comfort, and then they can go and take a few minutes with their stuffed animal and just rest, or if they need to talk it out with a friend. Like, there are different ways they can cope through their feeling. And I was joking with my friend that we were never taught this at 6 years old. I mean, our generation, and think about our parents' generation past that, this was, nobody had time for this. We did not hear about this. You know, you're fine, keep moving, keep going, keep doing. We were practical. We were raised with just work ethic. Most of us did not have a language of feeling brought in first grade. And I'm so inspired by this upcoming generation behind us of like, they're going to know what they're feeling, how to help themselves, how to cope, how to soothe. And then they're going to be probably better HR leaders for it, because they're going to be able to say like, oh, Bob's probably feeling frustrated today. I get it. I felt frustrated yesterday. Here's what helped me. Let me go talk to Bob about that process. Like, you have to learn it. So you're right. Whether we're learning it in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or at age 6, I would make some time for that. And again, it could be therapy. It could be a coach. It could be some books. I mean, Kelly and I can't preach all of this enough, like all of the above, right? Like, take some time to know yourself well. And that will make you an exceptional people leader.
It will, yeah. And I think you can read all of the stuff on it. I suppose, again, coming back to the question, I've just thought of a book actually, but I don't know if I can reach it, but there is Permission, oh, where am I? Permission to Feel.
Yeah, you told me about this one. I have to order it.
So, some of it may be a bit kind of textbooky, but like if we talk about emotions, like this, just ripped my cover off. This is what it says in terms of emotions.
Okay, so there are lots of different words,
there are lots
right?
of different emotions. So you've got kind of high energy emotions, low energy emotions, low pleasantness emotions, high pleasantness emotions. But I bet for most of us, we will talk about like 3 of these. Okay,
Yeah.
like happy, sad, angry, happy, sad, angry, frustrated. We probably do not have the language or the feeling for most of these.
Yeah.
And there's loads of stuff. Like there's I don't know if there's like an emotional curve, there's an emotional scale. Again, the emotional scale kind of usually in terms of pictures looks like a kind of cone. And again, is lots and lots of different colors that will talk about all of our different emotions. And you've got the scale, there's all of that kind of stuff. But again, I don't think enough of us have the language or the words or the understanding of what any of that would even look like. And I guess again, some of it comes to teaching, some of it again we can learn. But yeah, I think
having friends like us to talk it out with. Like these are things that we spend a lot of time talking about. So when Amy says like, I wonder how to grow this skill, part of it is having a friend or two that you, ideally in the HR people space, that you can say like, this is what's coming up for me. You don't always have to have the exact word, but try to just talk it through.
Right. Absolutely. And get to the bottom maybe of why it is that you feel you need to develop it. Are you feeling that you need to develop it because somebody has told you that you need to develop it? You know, like Amy, you need to, be better, you need to be more emotionally intelligent, Amy. So like, has it come from that, or is it a feeling? Is it something that you're picking up on? Is it something that you would like to explore more? Have there been issues that you don't feel you've been able to tap into as much? Has it been something that has been brought up over the course of the last 12 months? And therefore, you know, and again, I think, Laura, you and I spoke about this. I think you'd seen something, I'd seen something. But I think what has become really apparent over the last 12 months is, from an emotional perspective, at the minute, I think we are all wanting that kind of, if you like, those emotionally intelligent conversations with people. We want people to pick up on, I'm feeling really flat today and Laura hasn't asked me how I am. You know, I'm feeling really good today and Laura hasn't noticed that I'm smiling. You know, it's those kind of things. But in the same context, I think at the minute, a lot of us are needing more than any of us have got the energy to give. And so if this emotional intelligence, the kind of thinking behind it, if that has come over the last 12 months, if you were able to, obviously hypothetically, take the kind of lockdown COVID situation out of it, why do you feel emotional intelligence is something that you want to grow and develop? What's the importance of it? What would it help you to achieve or do or feel or be if you were able to develop more of it? But if you're looking at it purely in terms of the last 12 months, I think it's highly possible that you haven't got enough energy in the tank to give, and probably the people that you are speaking to and having the conversations with haven't got enough energy in their tank to be able to give. So I think maybe some kind of context around that as well.
Yeah, and giving each other grace, I think, is a very important point. When I say that I bring up these emails to people and kind of share areas for improvement, it doesn't mean I'm still calling them and still talking it through. In other words, we shouldn't judge each other for these moments. And we really need to just make sure that we are giving each other grace for what we're capable of. So if you're an HR director listening to this, feeling like you don't have enough capacity to soothe and comfort everyone in your orbit, know that that's not your responsibility. So emotional intelligence doesn't mean you have to overfunction for everyone and fix everything. Ideally, it's just showing anyone in your orbit that you care and you're coming from a place of love and kindness. But after that, you know, it's each of our responsibilities to take care of our own well-being. So try not to kind of carry the weight of the world as well. And I know how hard that is, and it can be, it can be a concerted effort sometimes to do that.
Totally. And, you know, we know, again, Laura and I spoke about it, and I think coming into the end of last year was exhausting, particularly for those of us who are the overachievers, the perfectionists, the people pleasers, the ones that want to keep helping and giving and, you know, and doing all of that stuff. Is really draining right now. And if we are missing some cues, or we're not being able to pick up on things that we think we want to pick up on, again, I think, you know, give yourself some permission to say that is okay. All of us, particularly, you know, we're in our silo bubbles at the minute, aren't we? Right? We're not getting out. We're not doing all of the things that lift us up. We're not doing all of the things that energize us. And I think we've got to give ourselves a bit of permission to just recognize some of that. You know, like if I'm feeling crap today, I'm not going to pick up on every single cue from everybody that's like, oh, like, you know, how are you? Let's talk about you. Because actually, I haven't got the headspace to talk about you today, because I need today to just either be about me or to not get into some of those really heavy conversations. Tomorrow, if I've had a really good sleep and a really good rest, then I'm feeling good about myself and I've done some really great stuff for me. Tomorrow, it might be, you know, kind of bring it on. And I'm totally aware and totally alert of everything that's going on. And actually, yes, let's have a conversation about it, because now I've got more that I can give you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is like a good reminder for HR leaders listening that they don't have to do everything on their own. Again, head of marketing can have emotional intelligence. Head of accounting can have emotional intelligence. You don't have to be the only one in your organization that gives a crap about the people. So just make sure that, you know, if you're having a day where you can't possibly get the staff like engaged and excited about a new initiative, bring in the one who's cheery that day. I always say this to hiring managers when they're like, oh, I can't interview today. My brain is fried. I'm like, fine, then like let's have someone else go in. Of course, for consistency purposes, that means they're now going to be in every time, but like that's okay. The last thing that you want is to go in front of other people in a state of exhaustion again, giving grace that you're allowed to feel that way, but then kind of rely on each other. That this is not all on you to be the class clown, cheerleader, court jester for your organization. You're allowed to have some depth of feeling as well. And I think this reputation of HR being guarded kind of stems from this, because people have never seen HR having real range of emotion.
Yeah, and again, some of that guarding, again, within HR, we see it with some leaders. I think, some of that guarding is absolutely so that we don't take everything on of everybody, which again, I totally get. But again, I think if we're constantly being guarded and we're not allowing ourselves to be seen, we just can't build the level of relationship that we need with other people. But also, a lot of the time, having to leave that guard up all of the time can be really, really exhausting. Like, if it's not who you are naturally, if you're not naturally a guarded person, if you're having to put that guard up all the time, or feeling that you have to put that guard up all the time, you will be exhausted, because you are constantly trying to be something that you're not. You're constantly trying to be someone that you're not. That is draining, exhausting, tiring. It will that will suck the life out of you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's funny, I guess Amy's question about emotional intelligence, I've gotten this sometimes too, where people will say, well, how do you know if someone's not emotionally intelligent? Where do you see it? It's not that there's either you are or you aren't. Obviously, it's a range of, it's a skill set. There's a range, it's always improving, and we all have days where we're not. I mean, even, I think where it shows up sometimes is in passive aggressive behavior. So when HR leaders might react in kind of a cranky, edgy way, where it's a little defensive, or based in a little resentment, or based in kind of a fear of you see it with generational bias all the time, this kind of resistance. To me, all that stems from a lack of emotional intelligence, because it's not addressing what you're really feeling. It's interesting. Kelly and I have to talk about Clubhouse. We haven't talked about it yet, but she's the one who got me the invite. But I'll bring this up because, so I'm new at it. I've only been on there a few weeks. I decided on Sunday I was a little bored. I said, I'll host a room, see who comes in. Lo and behold, a lot of people came in, so it ended up being fun. I did it just for an hour. But what was really interesting is, being aligned with my values. I mean, I believe in candor, and I believe that, you have to say what's real, clear as kind, as Brene Brown has taught us. So there were a few HR leaders who came in the room, and they started with a little bit of ageism, which again is no judgment, it's happening a lot. They were probably a little more senior in their career, kind of saying, the millennials and the younger HR pros coming in are expecting a lot, and it's, their salary expectations are high, and what they expect from us in terms of their engagement is high. And to be fair, they were saying, I guess we need to adjust. We definitely need to evolve. But there was also this feeling I was getting, even over audio only, of just this pissed off feeling that was happening. And kind of God, in the undertone of when I was that age, I didn't ask for those things. And who do they think they are? That was a little bit of the tone. And so I bravely decided in a room full of people to say, this is an opportunity for us to self-reflect on what's coming up for us here and where we might be feeling resentful. So if your compensation isn't where you need it to be, if your benefits aren't where you need them to be, if you're not engaged, then when a really confident employee at any age comes in with demands, it's going to trigger something in you. The room went silent. I was so nervous. I'm ugh. But I thought that silence was good, because I think it helped people see oh, right. Hold up the mirror instead of blaming, right? It's so easy to blame everyone else. These young kids asking for too much, or the world's changing too fast, or But to actually say yes, and what is that reflecting for you? What's being triggered in you? And so that's when Kelly and I are talking about the self-work, that's the stuff she and I are doing constantly. What did that bring up for me? As my friend Sarah Noel Wilson always asks me, which of your values is being trampled on right now? Maybe start there. What is it about that candidate, that employee, that leader that's really disrupting something in you? And I guess unless we're willing to do that, we're not going to progress, because we're just going to keep blaming and shaming, and it's not getting anywhere. So I wanted to share that with you, because I knew you would appreciate my moment of bravery there.
Yes, well done you. But yeah, that's exactly what we need. It has to start with us. We've got to get clear on what it is. And again, that from an emotional intelligence perspective, that awareness of, okay, what I'm hearing here is a lot of blame, what I'm hearing here is a lot of fear.
Yeah.
That is a really developed emotional intelligence skill.
Yeah.
Because you are able to go past the words and into the feeling, into the emotional side of where that type of language and where that type of conversation is coming from. And I think that's a skill that probably I don't see why 99% of us can't develop that skill. But I do again think that like you've done a lot of inner work, I've done a lot of inner work, you've done a lot around your values and your core and your purpose and all of those sorts of things. So being able to recognize some of that, actually what I'm hearing is really against my values. What I'm hearing is fear. What I'm hearing is X, Y, and Z. I'm going to call it out. And it does take bravery in those situations to call that stuff out. But I think if you haven't done that self-work on your self-worth, you wouldn't have called it out in that situation. It would have been, they're just sitting there moaning and they're whinging, like, I'm sick of hearing it. And then you go into, this is a ridiculous conversation. We're not getting anywhere. I'm fed up. I'm bored, all of that sort of stuff. So I think the more that
it's a cycle of shame, because then I would have just messaged someone I know and been like, all these HR leaders are so ageist. Blame them, shame them. And when actually they're not bad people, they're just experiencing a fear, they're experiencing an insecurity, they're experiencing a trigger, and they are not sure what to do with it. And so for those of us who have the wherewithal to see that, you're absolutely right, we have to address it. And this is the courage that's required in HR. Those of us who have high emotional intelligence, which yes is thanks to work, we are sort of compelled, I believe, as a responsibility to speak about it when we see it.
Yeah.
And that's how we can help people evolve.
Yeah, massively.
This is, by the way, like so much of your workshop coming up in March is about this work, isn't it? The core of who we are.
It is.
Yeah. Sorry for a subtle plug, but I mean, this is something I really believe in.
Laura's like, yes. So all of my coaching really is definitely very good to help people get to the core of who they are, who we are. And I have a group coaching program starting in March, which will really be helping to kind of develop all of this stuff. So who are we at the core? How can we ensure that we are clear on our values? How can we live from our values? How can we use that to prioritize our self-care and our self-worth? Even like improving our sleep, right? How can we improve our sleep when we're clear on all of our values, all of those sorts of things? So yes, group coaching program starting in March. Okay. Thank you, Laura.
No, of course, because I know this is something that you really believe in. Is like if we work on our core selves, we really do become better HR leaders. And that's why all the stuff we can roll our eyes about being cheesy, like, oh, these kids with these stuffed animals and these smiley faces, like, you can laugh all you want. These kids are going to be well ahead of us by the time they're our age. And
they absolutely will. Yeah. They're doing the stuff that we were always told not to talk about.
Yeah. And it's funny, like you bravely posted recently that you're going to be taking more time off, which I love, and really scheduling it into your calendar.
Yep.
And that's something that I realized, like, I still have some shame about, even for myself sometimes, like this feeling of, well, shouldn't I always be available? And the reality is no. There are times, because here's what happens. The days I take off, someone will message me, I don't respond right away, and they are pissed. And I might get an angry email. And then I take that as, oh, see, you can never leave the desk. You've upset someone. And that's the people pleasing in me that I'm still working on. And, if they can't really respect the fact that even recruiters and HR pros need breaks, that's their stuff with their core that they have to work on.
It is. And I think, how could it, so I have my out of office on my emails. So on days that I am not sat at my phone or at my desk, there is an out of office that says you're not going to get me today. I have got an out of office message on, because we know not everybody is emailing these days. It's WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and everything else. But I've also got an automated response on my LinkedIn. So if anybody messages me on LinkedIn, it will say, I am not speaking to you until next Tuesday. Thank you very much. See you later. If we could get that on every social platform, I think I would absolutely love it. But, you know, for me, I have learned that if it takes a week for me to get back to somebody because I'm off, you know, ordinarily it would not take me a week to get back to somebody. If I am taking time out myself and it takes me a week to get back to somebody, it takes me a week to get back to somebody. I'm not gonna, you know, last year I did let my time out not happen. And you know, I think some of that was because I was waiting for, you know, I was waiting for my yoga retreat in India. I was waiting for my holiday. I was waiting for some stuff, you know, so I'll wait until the world opens and then I'll take my leave. Yeah. And it just never happened. And I finished the year exhausted and drained and not wanting to have conversations with people, not wanting to really do anything. And that's not me. So this year I'm absolutely prioritizing myself, because I think, again, I've come into this year still drained and exhausted from last year. If I don't take the time out this year to look after myself, I cannot be doing the work that I'm doing with my clients. I cannot be having these sorts of conversations with you, because I will become somebody that's just drained and bored and like whatever. So for me,
it's really important. Thank you for setting the example for us and doing it publicly. I feel like it holds you accountable and reminds all of us that it's really an act of self-care and an act of emotional intelligence.
We need it. And it's, you know, I would love to be saying that, you know, this week I have jetted off to somewhere lovely, you know, that I'm sat by a beautiful swimming pool or a beautiful beach with sun beaming down on me. And I'm not, you know, like I'm sat in my house in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the fens in Cambridgeshire in the UK. But, you know, and again, we're really lucky in terms of our house, but I've done reading, I've been in the hot tub, I've had hot baths, I've done some yoga, I've been on the exercise bike. Today I've been planting seeds. I've been planting sunflower seeds and tomato plants. I have been sorting a few bits around the house. I have been creating, I've been listening to podcasts, I've been watching films, I've been listening to music. So I'm doing all of the stuff that I know lifts me up.
Love it.
And as long as I keep, you know, if I keep doing that this week, I've had sleep. Like I've not necessarily been to bed particularly early, but I've been waking up at like stupidly late every morning, which again is totally unheard of for me. And I'm feeling so much better for it. Like I got to Friday and I was an anxious mess on Friday. And yet doing some really nice stuff for myself over the weekend and over the last couple of days has really helped. And now I feel like more like me again.
I love it. Thanks for setting the example, Kelly.
You're welcome.
And we'll have to think about what we're going to talk about think about it too. And I think we need to think about what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks. So if anyone has any ideas, if any viewers are seeing this and you want to bring a comment in, by all means, we're open to your challenges and questions.
We absolutely are.
Have a good 2 weeks till we see you all next.
And you. So Laura, where can people get hold of you?
So LinkedIn at Laura Mazzullo, and Eastside Staff is Twitter and Instagram. And then my YouTube channel is Learn with Laura HR. And now I'm on Clubhouse. You can find me there. So I'll see you at all the places.
Awesome. And Kelly Swingler on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Clubhouse. Kelly Swingler.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
Well, actually, Instagram, you have the coaching. It's a different.
I do, yeah. So my business one on Instagram is at Coaching People Leaders.
There we go. Yeah, that's an important one to follow. Okay.
Awesome.
See you all in 2 weeks, everybody.
Bye.